Now recognize Dr. Jackson from Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Due to the constant inconsistencies, the contraindication, or the contradictions, and the lack of transparency from the Biden administration, CDC, the FDA, and the White House as well, many Americans have lost trust in our public health officials, and we've talked about that at length in a variety of these hearings. As I've mentioned before, regaining America's trust in our public health officials should be among our top priorities right now. But to do so, we do have to expose some of the misinformation and the misconceptions that were used, unfortunately, as an excuse to disrupt and control almost every aspect of our life for quite some time. Director Walensky, this is a tweet that you posted in August of 2020 before your tenure as CDC Director in response to a tweet from previous CDC Director. He writes, am I hopeful that we will have a vaccine in the coming months? Yes. Do I think this will get us back to pre-COVID reality? No. Vaccines take a long time to get to people. They often have stumbles in rollout, and they don't protect perfectly. It's very important, but it won't end COVID. And you replied, spot on. Combating COVID-19 requires a comprehensive, multi-pronged approach: masks, tests, treatments, vaccines. Those holding out for a vaccine alone are going to be sorely disappointed. Time to beef up the dimensions we have on hand already. In this tweet, you clearly indicate that vaccines alone will not be enough to combat COVID-19. However, as the CDC Director in July of 2021, you coined what I believe to be a divisive slogan, the pandemic of the unvaccinated, suggesting that unvaccinated are the reason the pandemic persists, and to some extent pitting the vaccinated against the unvaccinated, which I don't think did any favors. This appears to directly contradict your 2020 tweet. What caused you to reverse your opinion?
I wouldn't call it a reversal of opinion. All of our guidance has demonstrated that we have layered mitigation strategies. We have all of the things that I comment on in the tweet. What I meant by the pandemic of the unvaccinated is that the people who were dying were largely the unvaccinated, and the whole point was to say, if you want to prevent severe disease and death, you should get vaccinated. You can do all of these other things, and all of them help. There was all this layered mitigation that we were promoting at the time. So I would say that that tweet and my actions as CDC Director and that comment were actually all internally consistent.
Did the White House or any other official in the Biden administration pressure you or suggest to you that you should make statements that painted the vaccine as the primary solution for the pandemic?
No, but it was very clear from our vaccine effectiveness data that it was going to be one of the major things that helped us get out of it. I mean, we were seeing that at the CDC and all of our vaccine effectiveness data.
But I think you said earlier, that early on the vaccine was very effective, but later on it wasn't as effective, and people that were unvaccinated or people that were vaccinated were being hospitalized and were dying because the vaccine was no longer as effective as it was initially. Is that what you said?
I don't think I said it exactly that way. I think that over time we saw vaccine effectiveness wane, and over time we saw less effectiveness with the Omicron variants and their subvariants. But still to this day, we see remarkable effectiveness at preventing ICU stays and preventing death if you've been vaccinated and boosted with the most up-to-date booster.
Honestly, I don't agree with I don't disagree with your initial statement, the tweet that was sent out. What I disagree with is the later statement that, that only the unvaccinated, are dying from this. At the time, this was a year into it. This was July of 2021 when you made the statement about the pandemic of the unvaccinated. We knew at that point that to be true what you stated earlier, that the vaccine was not as effective as it was before, and even if that applied initially, it no longer applied at that point, that far in. So what I'd like to know is, did political pressure ever impact your CDC guidance on your public statements about the COVID-19? Did you ever feel like you were making statements based on political pressure rather than the science that was available?
I run a science-based agency. I'm a scientist, and the statements that I made are defended by the science.
And do you believe that any of the statements or the seemingly contradictory statements that were out there, do you think that contributed to the lack of trust in our public health system that we have today?
I would dispute the word contradictory. What happened over time is that vaccine effectiveness waned, and we got a new subvariant and variant that behaved differently in terms of how our vaccines worked. So it evolved over time. Our science changed over time. We learned more over time, and we had a new variant over time. And with that, it is my responsibility as the CDC Director to update the American people with the newest science.
Well, Director Walensky, I think that there was a lot of things that went wrong during the pandemic, but I hope that that you're going to reflect back on your decisions as well and the statements that you made in the course of this pandemic as the CDC director, because I think they drastically altered how the American public views our public health officials. I think it's safe to say that your resignation later this month is going to be an important step in returning America's trust to an organization that you did great damage to, in my opinion, during your tenure. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chair.